Hello dear viewers and welcome back to another episode of 4 Cents. My name is Amilcar and I am a sci-fi and fantasy author. Fair warning, the following analysis contains major spoilers for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. If you haven't watched the series yet, you might want to come back after watching it. Lately, I've grown tired of almost every modern show or series because they are always trying to lecture the audience correct our way of thinking, or just desperately please what they call the modern audience. And that's precisely why A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is not just the breath of fresh air many of us were hoping for in the George R.R. Martin universe, but it's also a powerful reminder of times when the main goal of many authors, myself included, was simply to tell a good story and entertain the audience. First of all, it's worth noting that the series has already been renewed for a second season in 2027 by HBO. One of the main reasons for this renewal is that it has quickly become one of the most talked about shows of the year, and it's not coincidence. Today we are going to break down why this adaptation works so well, what makes it different from the rest of Game of Thrones universe, and why its simplicity is actually its greatest strength. Let's start with the context. In a world saturated with remakes, reboots, and adaptations that seem more concerned with delivering current social messages than with telling a compelling story, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms arrives like a balm. It doesn't try to be an epic on a massive scale, nor is it overloaded with grand-scale political betrayals. Instead, it focuses on the small things. Actually, on a simple man, a very human character with more flaws than virtues. It follows a hedge knight and his squire as they walk the dusty roads of Westeros. It's a story that prioritizes honor, friendship, chivalry, and the personal pursuit of glory. And all this in a world where ambition, greed, betrayal, and deception are the order of the day. Actually, it's the same world George R.R. Martin has always shown us. And you want to know what is the best part? It doesn't lecture you. It simply tells an honest, well-crafted story. The series is based on the Dunk and Egg novellas written by George R.R. Martin over the years. The three stories published so far, The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Sword, and The Mystery Knight, were collected in the book A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. These tales take place approximately 90 years before the events of A Song of Ice and Fire, adapted as Game of Thrones. At a time where the Targaryens still sit on the Iron Throne, but the dragons have already gone extinct. It's a Westeros that appears calmer on the surface, although political tension continues to simmer beneath. What's interesting is that Martin wrote these stories as an intentional contrast to his main saga. While A Song of Ice and Fire focused on great noble houses and intricate games of power, Dunk and Egg show us the point of view of common people, or almost common people. The story follows Ser Duncan the Tall, Dunk, an orphan squire who, after the death of the knight he served, decides to forge his own path as a hedge knight, even though he was never formally knighted. With no lands, no personal sigil, and barely a few coins to his name, Dunk travels across the Seven Kingdoms seeking tournaments where he can prove his worth. His real adventure began when he arrives at a tournament in Ashford. There, he crosses paths once again with a very peculiar bald boy named Egg, with whom actually he had a brief encounter earlier. At first glance, The plot seems simple: a tournament, some fights, injustice that need to be righted, and a young man who wants to become the knight he admires. But that simplicity is deceptive. In reality, we are looking at a very well executed version of the classic hero's journey. Dunk doesn't just face enemies on the justing field. He constantly confronts his own ignorance, his ideals, and the harsh reality of Westeros. The secondary characters he meets along the way are far from mere filler. Each one enrich the adventure, offer wisdom, create conflict, or in some cases, brings tragedy. And this is where one of the series' greatest strengths lies: the perfect balance between its two protagonists. Dunk is a giant of nearly 2 meters, born in the poor streets of Flea Bottom in King's Landing. He is illiterate, unrefined, sometimes clumsy with words, and has a very personal and often confused understanding of what it means to be a knight. His oath doesn't come from books or septums. It came from what he saw in his mentor and from his own innate sense of justice. Dunk represents the realistic chivalric ideal. He's not perfect. He makes mistakes, he doubts, he gets angry. But he always chooses to protect the weak, even when it costs him dearly. His physical strength actually is enormous, but his true weapon is his conviction. On the other hand, we have Egg, whose real name is Aegon Targaryen, although this is revealed gradually. To give some context, he is the grandfather of the Mad King. He is a bad boy, intelligent, sarcastic, and far more cultured than his age would suggest. Egg complements Dunk masterfully, actually they are perfect. Where Dunk is impulsive and noble to the point of naivety, Egg brings cunning, historical knowledge, and a colder, more pragmatic perspective, not only of the world around them, but also of the protagonist's own reality. The relationship is the most emotional heart of the series. It's not exactly a traditional mentor-student dynamic because sometimes it feels like the student is smarter than the teacher. Actually, to be honest, he is. But what I want to say, it's more of an unequal brotherly friendship. Dunk teach values and strengths, while Egg teach literacy, politics, and subtlety. Together, they form an unforgettable duo that delivers both moments of humor and profound emotion. The chemistry between the actors is outstanding. Peter Claffey as Dunk and the young Dexter Ansel as Egg deliver one of the best performances we've seen in recent adaptations. They make you believe in their bond from the very first episode. Now, beyond the adventure itself, the series explores very Martinesque themes, but from a more hopeful angle. For example, what does it truly mean to be a knight in a war where the powerful trample the weak? Or can a man of humble origins maintain his ideals without becoming corrupted? And what is the difference between the romantic legend of knights, the tales sung by bards, and the dirty, bloody reality of the roads? Dunk embodies this internal conflict constantly. He wants to be like the heroes from the stories, but he quickly discovers that being honorable often means suffering, losing, or risking your life for people who may never even thank you. Unlike Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, which focus on palace intrigues, large-scale betrayals, and massive battles, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is much more intimate and grounded. As I mentioned earlier, there are no dragons here, at least not living ones, and no clashing armies. The camera stays close to the ground, following hedge knights, peasants and small local tournaments. The tone is lighter, with touches of humor and warm moments that strongly contrast with the dark cynicism of the other series. That doesn't mean it's naive. The cruelty of Westeros is still very much present, but it feels more personal and closer to home. This choice makes the series feel like a breath of fresh air within the universe. I mean the universe of Game of Thrones. It's as if Martin and the showrunners are saying, yes, the world is dark, but there is still room for stories about friendship and honor. Now, the adaptation is one of the most faithful and carefully crafted in recent years. It includes subtle Easter eggs for Game of Thrones fans, like names, lineage references, and even musical cues that reward attentive viewers without breaking the immersion. Visually, it is beautiful, it's just beautiful, with warmer and more grounded cinematography. The music doesn't try to be epic at every moment. Instead, it gently accompanies Dunk's humble journey, and that is just perfect. And the best news, HBO has already confirmed Season 2 for 2027, which will adapt the Sworn Sword. The story will continue to deepen the relationship between Dunk and Egg and pull them into larger conflicts connected to the aftermath of the Blackfire Rebellion. In summary, An Eye of the Seven Kingdoms proves that you don't always need to reinvent the wheel or overload the story with modern message to create something powerful. Sometimes it's enough to simply tell a well-crafted, simple story about a big-hearted man who only wants to be a good knight, and the clever boy who chooses to walk beside him. If you've been missing the soul of Westeros, this series gives it back to you. Personally, I enjoyed this series so much that I watched all 6 episodes in a single night. That alone should tell you how strongly I recommend it. If you're looking for a faithful, heartfelt adaptation that puts character and story first, An Eye of the Seven Kingdoms is easily one of the best things HBO has released in the Game of Thrones universe in a long time, in a very long time. And that's all for this video. If you like it, please give it a like, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for the next one. If you have any comments or critique, your opinion is important to us, so I read you on the comments. See you next time, and thanks for your time. Bye bye.